I think I caught her totally by surprise. I'm almost sure that she expected me to say yes dear and then do what she wanted. After all, hadn't that always been the way of it? I met Betty Ann during my second year in college. We were both business management majors, and we were taking a class in production management, and we were both put on the same class project. I liked Betty Ann's looks, personality, and sense of humor, so I asked her to go out with me. She said yes, and our relationship grew from there. We went steady during our junior year. I proposed, and she accepted at the beginning of our senior year, and we were married 1 month after graduation. We both got jobs and began to live the typical middle-class life. We were both doing well at our jobs, and then Betty Ann got pregnant and decided to leave the workforce and devote herself to being a full-time mom. I worked hard and advanced up the corporate ladder, and by the time I became a regional manager we had 3 kids. I considered myself one of the luckiest men alive. I had a wife who loved me and spoiled me rotten. I had 3 lovely children who were the apple of my eye, and I was a rising star in my company. It helped of course that I loved my job. It is a fact of corporate life that as you climb the corporate ladder, the workload gets heavier and heavier, until you finally reach the point where you can delegate. I hadn't yet reached that point, but I was closing in on it. The heavier workload translated into late nights at the office, and a lot of times when I had to bring work home with me. Those times meant a lot of late nights and busy weekends for me, but I didn't care because I had a goal. The vice president of sales and marketing was retiring in a month, and I was one of 3 men who had a shot at getting the position. Once there, my workload would only be a third of what I was doing in trying to get there. More responsibility, a lot of high-level decision-making, but I would be able to delegate the nuts and bolts work to subordinates. But first I had to get there, and that meant hard work, and hard work meant a pissed-off Betty Ann. Betty Ann had been planning a weekend getaway for us for almost 2 months. It was to be 4 nights and 5 days at Aspen, and she had already made the hotel reservations, purchased the lift tickets, arranged for her parents to take the kids, and started packing her bags. 2 days before we were to leave I told her that I had to cancel. We have a project fastly approaching a deadline and it is in trouble. I'm going to have to ride herd on it until it is done. Damn it Harold, you can't do this to me again. That damn job had interfered with our last 4 vacations, 6 of our last 7 anniversaries, and caused you to forget every one of my birthdays for the last 10 years. You owe me this weekend Harold, you owe me and I want it. Be reasonable Betty Ann. If I pull this project through on time I'm almost a shoo-in for Benson's job when he retires. Is that what this is all about? Making points to get Benson's job? You make that sound like a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing, it is a stupid thing. I just now realized I lost all those vacations, anniversaries and birthdays because I kept my mouth shut. What does that mean? Nothing Harold, just go work on your damn project while I finish packing. Finish packing? Yes Harold, finish packing. I'm going with or without you, but I am going. You would go without me. Do you think that would be wise? A married woman alone. That would be like wearing a neon sign saying, "Here I am, show me a good time." I fully intend to have a good time Harold. I'd rather have it with you, but I'll manage if you don't go. Really Betty Ann, I don't Just go do your reports Harold or whatever. I'm going and that's that. I'm through letting your goddamn job interfere with things. The day we were supposed to leave for Aspen came and when I got home from work, I found Betty Ann putting the last of her suitcases in the car. I took one last shot at trying to get her to be reasonable. I'm serious Betty Ann, going to Aspen alone is not a good idea. So come with me Harold. You know I can't do that. I have to make sure that this project doesn't go belly up. I save the project and I know I'll get Benson's job, and then things will get a lot easier. There won't be any more screwed up vacations or forgotten birthdays and anniversaries. I'll be in a decision-making position, someone else will be doing the donkey work. That's nice Harold, but I've been looking forward to this weekend for 2 months now, and I'd rather you go with me, but I'm going. I still don't think it is a good idea for you to go alone. I won't be alone Harold. What does that mean? I'll call you tonight Harold, after I get checked in at the hotel. Betty Ann. Enjoy your project Harold, and she got in the car and backed down the drive. I stood there watching her go and I wondered about her. I won't be alone remark. As she turned the corner at the end of the block I put it out of my mind and went into the house. I was reviewing some specifications when the phone rang. It was Betty Ann and she gave me her room number and the phone number of the hotel. She sounded out of breath and I asked her why. I just did 25 laps in the indoor pool. I'm curious Betty Ann, what did you mean when you said you wouldn't be alone? Did I say that? Yes you did. I must have meant that I expect to get hit on a lot while I'm here. I'm not a bad looking broad in case you have forgotten. I expect that I'll be kept on the dance floor all night. I probably won't even have to buy a drink after my first one. Well, I'm dripping wet and I need to get out of this bathing suit and take a shower. I love you, baby. See you in 5 days, and she hung up. Now, I've never had any reason to doubt Betty Ann, but to be absolutely honest about it, it was mostly because I didn't pay all that much attention to what she did. Why should I? She kept the house spotless, she spoiled me rotten, she raised 3 great kids, and I knew she loved me as much as I loved her. But 3 things just happened in the space of 6 hours that alone would have meant nothing, but taken together they were screaming something at me. Just to satisfy myself, I called the number she gave me for the hotel, and when the desk clerk answered, I asked him what were the hours on the indoor pool, and I got the answer that I hoped I wouldn't. The last time I had been in that hotel 4 years previous, they didn't have an indoor pool. According to the desk clerk, they still didn't. Couple that with Betty Ann's "I wouldn't be alone" remark, and a red flag was being raised. The third thing, and the one I really didn't want to think about, was that I was almost positive that I heard someone else breathing heavily in the background while I was talking to her. All of a sudden, I wasn't as sure of my wife as I had always been. I made myself a drink, sat down on the couch and put my feet up on the hassock, and tried to think of things that might have been an indication that my wife might have strayed on me. I did a lot of deep memory probing and found out that I really didn't know all that much about what went on around our house. I deferred everything to Betty Ann. She wanted to paint the bathroom a creamy yellow. "Yes, dear, whatever you want." "Buy a leather sofa for the living room." "Of course, dear, whatever you would like." She picked out my shirts, ties, and even my shoes, and I said yes, dear, and kept on doing whatever I was doing. She picked out the house we lived in, she picked our friends, she picked out the places where we went to eat, and she chose the films and TV shows we watched, and I just said yes, dear, and went along with it. Even this weekend that she had planned was all Betty Ann. She picked a hotel, she decided where we were going to ski, and she even made a list of the runs we would take. She made dinner reservations for each one of the nights we were to stay there. She asked me if the arrangements were all right, and I said, "Yes, dear, just fine." It occurred to me that my wife could have been the neighborhood gangbang queen, and I wouldn't have known because I hadn't paid any attention. The next 24 hours sucked as all kinds of shit ran through my mind. Friday night, Betty Ann called at 10 in the evening and asked me how I was. Sitting here having bad thoughts. My own fault, of course. If I was there, I wouldn't be here thinking the things I'm thinking, wondering about what I'm wondering about. And what would that be, babe? I wouldn't be sitting here wondering who it is that you are sleeping with while you're up there. There were several moments of silence from her end, and then she said, "And just why would you think that?" So I told her about what I'd heard in the background when she called, and then about my call to the hotel. You lied about the pool, heavy breathing in the background, and the comment you let slip about not be alone. 2 and 2 have always equaled 4 to me, Betty Ann. I can see we will need to have a talk when I get home. I don't see why. Your lack of outrage and lack of indignation over what I have just accused you of say all that needs to be said. Your "I wouldn't be alone" comment before you even left tells me that you knew I probably wouldn't be going along, and you already had made other arrangements. To me, that means that this probably isn't the first time you have cheated on me, and it probably means that this weekend wasn't really meant for you and me anyway. You set up everything, even your lover. More silence from her end, and I said, "Your lack of response to that is just as telling." "Good night, Betty Ann," and I hung up on her. The phone rang again almost immediately, and it rang several times during the evening, but I ignored it. I was sitting at the kitchen table poring over the list of things I needed to do to keep the project on track when the phone rang. It was Betty Ann. "You hung up on me last night." Didn't have any more that needed to be said. Can't think of anything that needs to be said now or that I need to listen to now. I've got a project I have to stay on top of, so you just go ahead and enjoy your long weekend with whomever it is you are sharing a bed with. There was a loud sigh of exasperation, and then Betty Ann said, "Harold, you do know that I love you, right?" "No, I don't know that anymore. If you love me, truly love me, this weekend wouldn't have happened." Even then, knowing what I'm thinking, I noticed that you didn't get in your car and race home to try and save your marriage. You can doubt it if you want, but I do love you, Harold, more than you can possibly realize, so please understand that I'm not saying this to hurt you. You could not bother going to work for a month and it wouldn't affect your job. You could walk into Randy's office and piss in the potted plant in the corner, and all Randy would do is smile at you. I don't understand, Betty Ann, what are you saying? Harold, you're a regional manager and you will be Benson's replacement because Randy and I have been having an affair for the last 6 years. Don't let the news upset you, Harold. I love you, I really do. I sat there, phone to my ear, but stunned into silence. 6 years. She had been fucking my boss for 6 years. She had been fucking that black son of a bitch for 6 years. I was a regional manager because she was fucking Randy. I hadn't gotten the job because of my hard work. Harold, are you still there? Yes, dear. We will talk about this when I get home. Yes, dear, whatever you say. I hung up the phone and then I sat there and stared at the wall. I spent the rest of the day stumbling around in a fog. I'd busted my ass for years to climb the corporate ladder, only to find out that I didn't have anything to do with my success. I find out that my wife is a cheating whore and had been for at least the last 6 years. And with Randy. My wife, born and bred in the South, was having an affair with a nigger. Not only a nigger, but one who was old enough to be her father. I was almost ashamed of myself for using the N-word when referring to Randy. I had never thought of him that way before, but then again before I didn't know that he was fucking my wife. I tried to imagine his big black body on top of my small white wife, and the image made me sick to my stomach. All the times he had smiled at me and shaken my hand he was thinking, "I'm fucking your wife, stupid," and I smiled back at him and shook his hand. I wondered how it started, but then I realized that it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered now was that it did start. Then I thought that 6 years with Randy. How many and for how long before Randy? Hell, if she was doing it while we were married, she was probably doing it while we were going steady, and while we were engaged. Then I had a really bad thought. Were my kids really my kids? Obviously none of them were Randy's, but could one or more be someone else's? 7 that evening Betty Ann called again. "Are you okay, Harold?" "Just peachy, Betty Ann, just fucking peachy." "So tell me, is his cocking you now like it was the first time you called me?" "No, Harold, and I'm sorry about that, it was inexcusable of me. He isn't in the room right now. The reason I called baby is to apologize for dumping it on you the way I did. I should have waited and done it face to face, so I could better explain it to you." "What's to explain? You pretty much said it all. You let me know that I'm not worth a shit at my job, and that the only reason I have one is that you are fucking my boss. Which, by the way, tells me that as far as you are concerned I'm not worth a shit in bed either. I'd say that pretty much covers it all." "It isn't that way, baby. You earned all your promotions, I didn't buy them for you. I just meant to say that you didn't have to worry about your job. As far as your abilities in bed are concerned I'm perfectly happy with you. I love you, Harold, honest to God I do." "That doesn't compute, Betty Ann. If you were perfectly happy with me, why are you fucking Randy? You say that you love me, but how could you have done this to me if you really loved me? This weekend was never about the two of us from the start. It was always going to be for you and Randy. You and Randy both knew how I would respond to the project in Turble's story. You both knew I wanted Benson's job, and that I would leap at the chance to save the day. The two of you played me like a piano, and I made the music you expected me to. You probably would have gotten away with it too if you had slipped up and made that offhand comment about not being alone. You say that you love me. It has been 3 days now, Betty Ann, 3 days during which you know that I know what is going on up there, but I notice that you still aren't here trying to find some way save anything from the mess you made. Goodbye," and I hung up on her. After hanging up on Betty Ann, the phone started ringing almost every hour on the hour, and the caller ID showed as Aspen area code, so I never bothered answering it. I took the phone off the hook when I went to bed, and when I woke up in the morning I put the handset back in the cradle, and it rang almost immediately. Caller ID said Aspen again, so I ignored it and went and took my shower. It was still ringing when I left the house for work. I stopped at Denny's for breakfast, and when I got to work Stella, my secretary, greeted me with, "Your wife has been trying to reach you. She asked me to have you call her at this number as soon as you came in." I took the piece of paper she handed to me and watched her raise her eyebrows as I wadded it up and tossed it into a step-basket without even looking at it. "No calls from her, Stella. Just tell her I'm out of the office." "I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, but I won't lie. I'll take messages or I'll tell her you told me not to put her calls through, but if you are here I won't tell her that you aren't." "Thank you, Stella, I needed that." "Needed what, Mr. Hamilton?" "After the weekend I've just had, it is nice to know that there are still honest women around." I took the paperwork on the Trouble project and ripped it to shreds and dropped it on Randy's desk, and then I went into my office and busied myself with making phone calls. I took everything in my in-basket and dumped it into the wastebasket and started cleaning out my desk. At 10 Stella came in. "Your wife has called 4 times and I've told her that you wouldn't take her calls, and she said fine. Tell him that I'll just have Randy call him. See if he refuses that call." "Could I ask what is going on here?" "It would seem, Stella, that your employer and my wife are upset that I found out they spent the weekend together in Aspen, and then had the temerity to get pissed about it. Well, since I won't talk to Randy either and he is your boss, I guess I need to get you out of the line of fire. You can honestly say that I am out of the office if either of them call again," and I got up and left. I went home and took the phone off the hook and got busy doing what needed to be done. I didn't go into work at all on Tuesday. At 6 Tuesday evening I put the phone back on the hook and finished up what I was doing. At 9 I heard a car door slam, and a minute or so later I heard Betty Ann holler out, "Honey, I'm home." I didn't answer back and just waited for her to come find me. It was a very awkward moment when she walked into the kitchen followed by Randy. She walked over to me and bent to kiss me, and got a very surprised look on her face when I turned my head away. The surprised look turned into a hurt look, and then she said, "Why haven't you been answering the phone, and why wouldn't you take my calls at work?" "Because we don't have anything to say to each other anymore." Obviously I didn't do a very good job of explaining things. I thought that might be it, so I persuaded Randy to come home with me so we could sit down and talk about this like adults. I almost smiled at that. Well, yes, I guess that would be good, being like adults I mean. Why don't you open a bottle of wine and pour us all a glass so we can relax? Yes, dear. What would you like? I think we still have a couple of bottles of the Jacob's Creek Merlot left. Coming right up, I said as I got up and went down to the basement where we kept the wine rack. I took a bottle of the Merlot back to the kitchen, and as I poured the 3 glasses I was wondering why I hadn't just gotten up, stomped the shit out of Randy, and then tossed the 2 of them out of the house. I think it was because of the everything is fine attitude that Betty Ann was exhibiting, and I just wanted to see how stupid she thought I really was. I took the wine over to the table and then sat down to see what was going to happen next. Betty Ann took a sip of her wine, and then she started talking. "First, Harold, you have to understand that my love for you is deep and unconditional. You are my life and you must understand that. I love you and only you, and I don't want to spend my life with anyone else. That said, I need to say that I'm addicted to Randy's cock. I don't love Randy, I have never loved Randy, but I do crave his cock. He is not a better lover than you, Harold, but he has size. When his cock is in me it fills me so full and touches me in places that drive me crazy. There are some places inside me that his cock can touch that give me long, almost continuous orgasms. It is strictly a physical thing, Harold, and other than what his cock can do for me, I have no feelings for Randy at all. I know it is brutal for him to sit there and hear me put it that way, but it is nothing new to him. I've been telling him that for 6 years now. He is nothing to me but a huge cock, and while I don't understand it in the least, that seems to be enough for him." Then Randy spoke up. "It is true, Harold, I'm in love with Betty Ann, and I have been after her for years to leave you and marry me, but she won't even consider it. She loves you and she won't leave you, so I settle for what I can get and try to be happy that I get at least that much. So you see, Harold, you have nothing to worry about. I love you and only you." "Well, I guess you are right then. The fact that you love me while he is only a piece of meat to you makes everything better. Silly me, this is just about cock size and nothing else. All that worrying and for nothing. I'm glad we got that cleared up, baby. Why don't you just go on upstairs to the bedroom while I say goodnight to Randy? I'll be up in a little while and we can make love." I looked at her and started laughing. I laughed so hard that I had tears in my eyes. I got myself under control, and then I backhanded Randy so hard that he and his chair went backwards onto the floor. He scrambled to get up, and by the time he was on his feet I was standing in front of him, and I smashed him in the mouth 3 times, and he went back down. I kicked him 3 times hard in the crotch, and then I leaned down, grabbed his shirt front and pulled his face up to within inches of mine. "Consider that my resignation, you black son of a bitch," and then I slammed his head back down on the floor and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" asked Betty Ann. "I'm going home." "Home? You're home?" "No, I'm not. When I found out what you were doing, my first thought was to throw your cheating ass out on the street. Then I thought of all the memories of you that the house would keep pushing at me, and I decided that I would be the one to get out. I rented an apartment Monday and I spent yesterday moving into it. That's my home now. Don't do this to me, Harold. I love you, you know I do. I don't want you to leave me. Please, Harold, I don't want to lose you. You should have thought of that before you decided to become Randy's fuck toy. And while I'm on that subject, Betty Ann, even if I bought into your stupid addiction story, there had to be a first time with Randy, when you didn't yet know about his big cock. Were you still my loving wife then? Was I still the one you wanted to be with when you fucked him the first time? Were you worried about losing me then, Betty Ann? I turned and walked out the door while she kept crying out for me not to go.